everyone, and welcome to this early career webinar and discussion, which hopefully will provide something of interest for everyone, whether your career is just about to get established, whether you've been working for a few years, or maybe you're mid-career and thinking about changing tack. So we're going to take all questions at the end, so please feel free, add questions into the chat as we go, and at the end, if we have time, then maybe we can look at them, and if we can have some more discussion around that, then we will. My name is Fiona Cawkwell. I'm a lecturer in remote sensing at UCC. And so I often see people at the very start of their careers when they're moving on from our undergraduate programs and our MSc in geoinformatics. But I'm always delighted to see our graduates, a few years into their career. And I know there's one or two people here who I've taught maybe a number of years ago now. And I love hearing people's stories. How did they go from that master's program through to where they are today? And while our panelists today are not UCC graduates, I know they've all got fascinating stories to tell of their own journeys through geoinformatics. So perhaps we can start by introducing our three panelists. You can briefly tell us something about your own career paths, what motivated you to make the decisions you made, and then we'll get into some more discussion after that. So perhaps, Helen, can we start with you?
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I'm Helen Gilmartin, and I'm excited to be here with you today. I've been in the industry about 18 years. I've had incredible opportunities, so delighted to share some of that with everyone here today. The geospatial technology element of my career has been really important, learning all about that and knowing what they do. So I've taken various roles around leadership and marketing, and so happy to share any information that I can. Hexagon is a company that is one of the key players in the delivery of geospatial technology, so I worked with them, and the World Geospatial Industry Council, which you may hear me talking about, is a trade association of about 60 geospatial and Earth observation companies. And so I represent them and all our member companies around the world. And one of the things we're asked about quite often is this widening gap in geospatial, not just careers, but just getting people into geospatial, and do they understand what it is, and Earth observations. So delighted to be here today and share some of my experiences. And thank you all for turning up in great numbers. As Fiona said, it's a beautiful day out there. So we're delighted to have you.
Okay, thanks, Helen. Glen, perhaps you can introduce yourself now.
Yeah, hello all. I'm Glen Bambrick. Similar to Helen, I'm about 18 years in GIS. I did my first GIS postgraduate in Maynooth University. From there, I've worked in Canada and Australia, the UK, and more than a decade now back in Ireland. And that was the great thing about GIS. It allowed me to work abroad and find work. And in various different industries, I've worked in agriculture, oil and gas, mineral exploration, engineering, telecommunications, utilities, planning. I know nothing about those industries, but GIS allowed me to get and work with them and learn about them. And I really have a good overview of GIS in Ireland, so I'm hoping I can help today with any questions. I know I see a lot of familiar names there that I've met in the past and more recent as well. So welcome.
Okay, thanks, Glen. And Marion, perhaps you can introduce yourself too.
Yes, my name is Marion Murphy. I'm in the geospatial industry for almost a combination of Helen and Glen for 30 years this year, which is very, very unsettling to say. And even within that, it wasn't my first choice at all. I didn't even understand there was a geospatial industry way back in the last century when I got involved. So it was by chance rather than by design, and it just shows you, I suppose, even though it wasn't, I studied electronics and that was where I was going. I fell into the geospatial industry through some experience I had with MicroStation. I don't know if anyone remembers Bentley MicroStation, but that was a GIS of choice back in the day, and I had experience of that and sort of just ended up taking a role for the summer and never really left. So I mean, if I didn't find a lot of rewarding experience and have met so many fantastic people and think it's such a lovely, great industry to be in, I wouldn't be in it today. So currently I'm managing director at Mallon, So within my career, I suppose I'm less on the technical side of the GIS, but more of, I suppose, the managerial side. So I've had a lot of roles where it's been project management, account management, business development management, all sorts of stuff like that, and now into the strategic side as well. So there is a role for the technical side, but also there's a potential for a managerial position within the industry. So I have to say, from the sort of 1995 when I started to now, it's been an absolutely a massive trajectory of change, and it's very welcome too. So from starting off with, say, capturing maps on paper OSI maps to now talking about AI and Python and all sorts of weird and wonderful things, it's really seen, particularly in the last few years, rapid growth. So we obviously, as an employer as well, are very interested in maintaining the amount of people coming into GIS and into geospatial EO, and really hopefully everyone will find it a very rewarding career. Plenty of change, so and plenty of aspects that you can move into, whether it's engineering, as Glen has mentioned some, or whether it's the GIS technical side, services side. So there's something for everybody. And also I'm chair of the Women in Eurogi Women in Geospatial Association, so our group. So from that end, I'd like to welcome everybody here today, and we're really happy to try and encourage everyone to participate in the GIS sector. So thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Marion. So we've three very different panelists coming at this geoinformatics space from different directions, some perhaps more intentional than others. I didn't realize until today that you just fell into GIS, Marion. So yeah, that can be reassuring sometimes for some of our graduates who are looking to get onto the careers ladder and sometimes very anxious about what that first job is going to be. So maybe we can start by focusing on those who are just coming out of MSc level programs and getting started with their geoinformatics career. And maybe I can turn to you first, Glen. What would be your advice on seeking that first job as a graduate, especially when we look at so many of those job adverts that talk about 2, 3, 4 years experience? As a graduate, where do you kind of break into that? So any advice on job seeking, writing job applications, preparing for interviews for those just graduating now?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic time to be graduating. There's far more roles and industries and companies out there using geospatial technology in Ireland than ever before. I keep a very close eye on LinkedIn, and every week I see someone starting a new role in a company I never heard of using geospatial technology. And you always question, how did they get this role? It's not advertised. So only a small portion of roles are advertised. I see so many people starting new roles, and I'm wondering how. So that leads me to believe that they've gone a different approach, that they've been known to the person that's hired them, or they contacted the company directly. I generally advise LinkedIn, get yourself the premium license for a month for free, and then cancel the membership. When you go to the search bar and you type in GIS and hit enter, and then go to people and change the location to Ireland, you will have a very long list of people in this country that have touched GIS in their career or are still in it. You can then make a list, get an Excel spreadsheet, make a list of all the companies you found. Do they have a website? Do they have a careers portal? Who was the person on LinkedIn you found them for? Maybe connect with them and start sending out your CV and introducing yourself. It's a far better percentage game than applying to roles online, where you're going to have a lot of competition. So get yourself out there, get yourself known through a different avenue. And again, as I said, just that different percentage over the next person that is just relying on jobs boards. What this can happen then is, I did it when I was in Canada and Australia, printed out CVs and walked around and got hired by a company in each country without even going through job boards. They weren't really around back in the day anyway. But it's that direct approach. They mightn't realize, no, we don't need any new people. And then 3 weeks later, we're probably going to think of hiring a GIS technician or something else in the geospatial world. We don't have to go advertise now because this person's came to us. So although it'll cut out me as a middleman, as a recruiter, it is a fantastic way to get yourself known and play that percentage to get your first role. When it comes to interviews, the best advice I can give is to ask questions. Not about questions about the company itself, but about the GIS that they use there. Get that interviewer to do a lot of the talking. If they want you to know some ArcGIS Pro or ArcGIS Online, tell them your experience. Starting out is going to be your college experience for sure, but fire the question back on them. How are they utilizing ArcGIS Pro in their company or ArcGIS Online? What size is their team? What projects are they working on? They'll start telling you everything. And let's say you don't even get the role and you have 5 interviews. You have 5 clear visions of how GIS is utilized across 5 different companies that you never knew before. And trust me, it's done differently everywhere you go. So having that knowledge can be very powerful for even improving how your interview skills go when talking about GIS.
Thanks, Glenn. That's some really practical tips there. Helen, have you got anything that you can add to that?
Well, I think I totally agree with Glenn. I mean, that crowdsourcing advice is very important, and LinkedIn is the place to do it, really. So leverage your extended network as much as you can and follow groups. I mean, there are so many groups on LinkedIn now talking about geospatial and the amount of industries it spans, and that's the thing, actually. You don't have to be limited to one area of geospatial. So join some of those groups. Social media is incredible too. We see, as Glenn said, a lot of people getting new roles. Maybe have a look at them, reach out to them, ask a targeted question, what attracted you to that company? We're very lucky, I suppose. We see companies really targeting people as well, kind of speaking now to their culture, what they're about, what they're offering. It might be hybrid work arrangements, or sometimes it's a car or whatever that you might be interested in. But also, I think, because we have a lot of students here, I mean, there are many, you probably have more potential mentors across this industry than you're even aware of. So try and reach out to those. They might be professors, visiting professors. They might be, again, people like us that you've met if you want any advice, or you're going for a role, or you want to know about a company, for example, or acquaintances, someone you meet on LinkedIn. Always you can learn from them in so many ways. A single conversation can really lead to unlocking insights and information that you won't typically get. And so bring all that with you when you go to an interview or when you apply for a job. Make sure it's a good fit for you, that you're not just going just to do it. And I think the importance of being intentional is really important. So, what I mean about that is being intentional about your skills. This is what I've learned, this is what I've seen, this is what I've done. And some of that you can gather information, as Glenn said. But I always felt that throughout my career, like focusing on what I excel at, but also the things I want to improve at is really important. We hear that a lot, upgrading your skills. And actually, this is probably one of the industries that, you need to upgrade your skills all the time, because, we're constantly mapping the physical and digital world, but putting them together has become like an incredible feat. So it is worth having a look at that, I think, and seeing what part interests you. And that Glenn mentioned GIS, and it brought me back to, many years ago when we started, probably, the biggest obstacle to GIS was pen and paper. Now that has completely gone. Our students here would think we were nuts if we were talking about sub books and writing things down. But you still need to bring, you still need to be a very conscientious, I think, person to work in this industry, because the data we provide is hugely important to influence a lot of things. So you need to be a studious and conscientious person, and you need to let your employer know that that's who you are, and that you mightn't know it all now, but you certainly are interested in the progression of yourself and their company, because that's what's important. Thanks, Helen. And Marion, as managing director then of one of these companies,
Yes.
do you get a lot of cold calling and on spec emails and CVs?
I was actually just putting a note down there, because yes, we do get some. And like Glenn mentioned there, it just so happened, I remember getting one in particular, and it was actually somebody with quite a lot of experience, but it was a really good CV. And I'd say, you know, it was so good that we were like, it wasn't even just the CV, it was just the way it was, the cover letter hit so many points that we consider, and that was, you know, that we were actually looking to the future. And we felt like this was just the best thing ever that had landed on our lap, and the person was straight in and, you know, interviewed and got the role. I mean, we couldn't believe it. We'd been looking to sort of fill that very specific skill set for a long time, and it just came in the door on spec. So there is a lot to be said for, you know, sending in your CV, writing a cover note to say where you know, where you are, what's your profile, what your USP, etc., and how you can, you know, what your skill set can provide to an organization. I think it is very, very true. Also, you know, as Helen mentioned there, being a good fit, do consider what you want to do, or even once you're in the industry and working away, you know, have a look at organizations. Are they a good fit for you? I mean, I know some of that might be a testing situation. You know, you need to get your first role maybe under your belt to know what you do and what you don't want, but don't be afraid to move around. I know I'm saying that as an employer, but don't be, because, you know, there's plenty of skills that you can pick up as you go along. We've had people who've been with us early in career, left and come back again, and they've had, they've had the experience from other organizations as well, or they've gone traveling, or whatever the case may be. So there, as I say, it's a great market at the moment for people looking for roles, whether it's early or mid or later in your career. So I definitely would say that. Another thing there that Helen mentioned was mentorship. I think I totally agree, Helen. I think, you know, finding people within the industry that you can bounce ideas with, whether that's could be for various things, whether that's because they have a really big network and they can introduce you to other people, whether they're, you know, whether like that they've, you know, very specific technical skills that they can help you to develop, or just even just bounce ideas off generally. Where do you think I should go next? What do you, you know, who do you think I could talk to now? Do you know any other organizations that maybe work in a sector that you want to be involved in? So a network is one of the most important thing, and I say that to everybody. One of the most important things you can ever start to build. Look at, you know, if you're in university at the moment, look at your peer group, and actually those people you don't know in 5-10 years time might be the key to getting your dream job, or could be on an interviewing panel, and, you know, or just a CEO of a company or whatever. But they really is, from day one, your network will go, definitely bring your network with you and then build it out from there. I do think that while LinkedIn is exceptionally good for that, as Glenn mentioned, in terms of searches, and Helen mentioned in terms of reaching out to people within the network, I also think that it is good to get out and about, and there's nothing like meeting people in person. And don't be afraid to approach people in person at all, or you know, regardless of where you are in your career. I think there's nothing like having conversations with people in the industry at an event. I know there's not that many in-person events around, but look, where they come up, do try and attend if you can, because they are definitely the gold standard for me in terms of meeting and having a chat with somebody informally, or, you know, and getting the information about what's happening in their organization, what's happening in, you know, is there anyone that they know that could kind of help you out with progressing your career. But don't forget the soft skills side. While we talk about technology and technical challenges and innovation and technical learning and CPD, and that is a given now, you know, it's constant, you know, it's lifelong learning, say, but it really is important to develop your skills for yourself on a personal level, and also within an organization. Please, you know, I would say always try to make the best of any CPD that's on offer, or training that's on offer. But don't forget the soft skills side either, you know, so things like whether it's time management, communication, being kind of proactive in and having a kind of a growth mindset. So rather than waiting for something to happen, maybe just be proactive in your search for feedback from people if you're not getting it, or where can you improve. I think feedback is always something that can really, really help to focus where you want to be in your career and get advice on maybe what the next step could be. So I think feedback is particularly important. But yeah, so that's we've covered quite a bit there now.
Yeah, well, you certainly moved into what I was going to kind of think of as the next steps. Once you've got that first job, how do you then start to position yourself for career development? So Helen, Glen, do you want to pick up on any of the things Marion was talking about there in terms of upgrading, whether it be technical skills or soft skills? How would you recommend going about doing that?
I think the soft skills is really important, actually. What we see out there, and Glen is running a company, so he'll know this, but, a lot of the companies are recruiting on technical ability, of course, because, of the equipment and the work, but they also want these soft skills because they need you to work as part of a team or to interface with their customers. So this is the part, I think, that is growing exponentially, because as we know, data and the amount of data that you'll work with in whatever industry you decide to work in with survey or the observation, you have to explain that data. Data is quite often you're explaining it to government organizations or people who aren't technical, so there's a storytelling aspect to that. What is that story the data is telling? What is that project they need to use it on? So there's some of the soft skills that we're seeing that more and more companies are recruiting on, and also why companies are reaching out for experienced people to bring them in because they already have these, right? And they can let them off and do it. But so it is really important. And I think that, once you get in, you need to learn too from the people in that organization and how they present themselves at these meetings. So there is a little bit of presentation in it. It's a very varied skill set. I showed a slide recently about the soft skills that I thought the expanding skill set is what I called it, because actually you could add to it every day. But it is worth knowing that, because that is what companies are looking for once you land. I mean, you want to land and expand out there. So, that is what they're looking for. So make sure that you have some experience. And that might be just doing a presentation and or putting yourself out of your comfort zone and being able to tell that story. I think that's hugely important. And, it's like for all of us, whether you're a seasoned, I've worked with so many people over the years, whether you're a seasoned geospatial professional or just starting out, those careers span so many industries. So always kind of keep a look out there, see what's interesting. It might be climate, it might be something else that on a personal level you're interested in or you see happening. So ensure that you kind of keep up to date, I think, if you want to have a long-term industry, professional career. And I think the other thing when Marion was talking about people sending in like incredible cover letters and things, I think you've got to remember we still are a band of professionals out there in the industry. So, but professionalism in survey isn't just about what we do. I always think it's about how we do it and how it affects the public, and now not just the public, but actually, with the incredible changes in climate, it's how it's affecting the global market. So we're not just kind of thinking in Ireland or just thinking in a kind of small aspect. We have this opportunity really to affect and improve things, I think, on a global scale. So that's kind of important to, set your sights, think about what that looks like or where you'd want to go. And I agree with Marion, there aren't a huge amount of geospatial events here, but certainly, UK, I mean, I've been around Europe this year and I'm blown away by the amount of them. So if you're on holidays for a few days somewhere, maybe have a look at that and see what's going on, because quite often they're free in. They're a great way to meet companies who have wide-reaching offices around the world. You know, a lot of you guys will want to travel and things. So, I mean, take those opportunities. It's not something you think about if you head to Madrid or Barcelona or something, but I encourage you to look because every week there's a different geospatial show or Earth observation indeed. So, you know, and just keep in mind the geospatial sector, it offers a dynamic and ever-changing career landscape. So, you know, think about that, you know, just think about where you fit into that.
Yeah, I can add on a few points there. Just touching on the soft skills, you'll often see, I'm just going to talk broadly about GIS here, but I know it transcends into Earth observation and into surveying as well. You know, probably communication for me is probably the biggest soft skill that you're going to need. And now that I've started my own company, I am a one-man band at the moment, I still find communication is still key, especially when I'm dealing with multiple clients. I'll make sure I ask for deadlines, maybe a hard deadline and a soft deadline, so I can manage my own time. But when you're working for companies, you'll often have to engage with different stakeholders, you know, so being able to communicate with people outside of the company is very important, both, you know, technically and non-technically. There's often liaisons that go out and land access, and those people will be using your technology, maybe Survey 123 or another piece of technology. So being able to communicate how to use technology and also be able to talk to people is very important going forward. It can be hard to get those skills unless you're actually working in the industry, but something to keep focused on is to constantly develop those communication skills. There are two books I love. One is How to Talk to Anyone, and the other one is Never Split the Difference. They're two fantastic books. The second one is great for negotiating, especially when it comes to salary time. With sort of developing those other technical skills there, find a job spec online, be it in this country or somewhere else, and work towards that. That's the job you want. Work towards it. Now, you might not be able to work towards that in your current role because you don't use that technology. You'll have to put in your own time investment. And it really is only your time investment because there's so many cost-effective platforms out there to learn. You'll find loads of stuff for free on YouTube. You have Udemy courses for a tenner, you know, so it's really just your time investment to build upon these skills. So if you find that job spec going, that's where I want to be. Okay, that's for someone that has 5 years experience. 5 years experience for me is just an arbitrary number. You know, I was recruiting for a role at the beginning of this year. They wanted 3 years experience with Esri technology. I put forward someone with 1.5. They questioned it, but this person touched on every single thing they did for their first year and a half of their career. And, you know, they were perfect for the role. It was questioned. I said, interview them. If I'm wrong, I'll take it on the chin. But they offered this person the role straight away after the interview. So you can gain a lot of skills in a short space of time. Don't worry about that number of years. Number of years doesn't equate to, you know, skills progression or career progression. You can be stuck in a dead end job in GIS just like in any other role in any other industry. So you have to realize this. You know, I like Marion said there. People, you know, encourage people to move on and work in other places. Some people find it's controversial, but I encourage job hopping in GIS. Every 2 years, I used to take stock. Am I learning? Am I progressing? And am I enjoying it? You know, so if the progression stops, where are you going? You know, you had fantastic 2 years progression, and then you have 3 years of stagnation. You know, it's very hard to move roles when other people have had 5 years of, you know, real progression and real skills progression. So you have to constantly take stock of where you are. Plus, when you go from job to job, you're going to see how GIS is deployed and used in different industries, in different companies. Different engineering companies will use GIS completely different than the other. And I used to call it, you know, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to GIS. A company I worked for, I thought, this is fantastic. And then I go to the next and going, oh, hang on. It wasn't so great in the last company. If I went back there, I'd be a superhero because I could, from what I've learned in this new company. And you've seen people have gone back and worked with Marion again. you know, it's always good. Don't ever burn bridges. Always leave professionally, because it will open the door to come back to those companies again in the future. And I said, you can probably go back as a superhero with all the extra stuff that you've learned along the way. That doesn't suit everyone. You should always, you know, do what suits you and your own personality and the own risk that you want to take. You know, I was working for a company, I didn't simply like it there, so I quit and I went on a dole for a couple of months. I was living at home and I was able to do that. I was comfortable. But I promised myself the next role I get is something that I really, really want. And I treated every single day like a work day. I got up and I applied for whatever roles I could see. And then I did courses and I read books, and I progressed my skills in the 2 months I wasn't working. And from that, I set up a blog and put that at the top of my CV. So a portfolio is a fantastic way to show your skills progression, especially if you're working in a where you're not learning those skills in your current employment. Show that you're working towards that goal that you've set, that job spec that you want. When I click on a CV and I can see a portfolio, I can see they're not learning this in their experience, I instantly know this person has a real passion for GIS and is progressing to get to where they want to be. So there's loads of things you can be doing to have that skills progression, and between that 2 to 5 years is very important for those skills progression.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. Yeah, between the three of you, there's some really practical, solid advice there, which hopefully will resonate with people who are either looking for jobs at the moment or considering perhaps moving jobs. And I know, yeah, particularly for some of our female listeners and members today, yeah, there can be a lot of insecurities and uncertainties that come with things like moving jobs, and perhaps it's a bit harder as a woman to develop some of these skills around networking and professional development. So, you know, do you have any advice perhaps aimed specifically at women and how you can promote yourselves and stand out from the crowd and use your own skills as your USP as a woman? Helen, do you want to comment on that?
I think this is there's a lot of conversation around women in geospatial at the moment, which is amazing. I think anytime we put attention on a topic, it gets improved, let's be honest. So, I think that's fantastic. And you will get a lot of advice, within this industry. I'm always asked a lot of questions. I think I mentioned that to you earlier, Fiona. It's a great time to be a woman. I've been very fortunate. I have had leadership roles, so I think it's a great time to really be involved. But what I'd say is just balance those external guidance with, some self-reflection, because, everyone will tell you different things. And, there was a time when the technology was difficult to work with, from a practical point of view, say, that has changed so much now. We have a lot of the time we're working on data, and I know I keep saying the word data, but we are working on that as opposed to being out in the field. The work in the field has become much faster and quicker and more efficient and easier. So I think for a woman that is of course a benefit. I think flexible working is key for women. As you progress through your career, that's what you're looking for. But companies are also out there and willing to offer that, so just position that early on, what is important to you. I think sometimes when you don't communicate it correctly, then there is the complexity of, where you're at then later on, but, align, it should align with your personal circumstances. What you need and the time you can give it early on in your career might be the same 5 years down the road. So ensure that you align that with your personal circumstances and, filter people's suggestions, I would say, through your own lens, because as I mentioned, I certainly go to a huge amount of events around the world, and it would be great to see more women there, of course, but we are seeing an increase. What we're not seeing which is important, is women progressing through that. So that's why I mentioned these couple of steps. So, you know, when you get the role, that's perfect. You're in a different space. But, you know, as you progress through it, I think it's important, because what we want is women in leadership roles, sitting at a board table. We understand why we should have that diversity of thought and opinions. It's really important for our industry, I think, moving forward. But trust your gut when you're making career decisions. As Glen said there, you know, there's times your gut is telling you this isn't for me. So step back from it and trust your gut. And, you know, it's your responsibility, I think, to stay current. And I think that's hugely important. And I say that whether you're, you know, it doesn't really matter whether you're a woman or a man or whatever in this industry. It's our responsibility to stay current and communicate correctly what we want to achieve. And, you know, I know very few companies that don't want to retain women in roles, that don't want to retain staff in general, you know, because there is a huge amount of movement around this industry, which is great. As Glen said, it keeps you current and brings fresh perspective. But also we need some people that stay, you know, so they can really instill the culture over the years and bring along younger people. And one of the things that happens quite often because there's quite a movement around roles is, you know, managerial roles are really recruited within a company, because that's just the easiest thing to do in order to keep people on whatever, and they have the skill set. But quite often we're not backfilling those roles. So we're creating a problem for the manager. He goes on, he takes on this new role, but he's still trying to do his old role, you know. So that's why we need to really, you know, expand our the skills that we have. And I think just, you know, there's a widening gap between the people coming out of university and the people needed really to grow this industry. So, you know, everybody here is in a wonderful position. It's very exciting. But, you know, when you go, I think just, you know, keep current, upgrade your skills, communicate correctly what you expect from that role. And there'll be very few employers that won't want to keep you.
Okay, thanks, Helen. And Marion, yeah, perhaps you can pick up on some of those things Helen was talking about in terms of female leadership and progression through the company.
Yeah, it's true. I think that, you know, I agree with everything that Helen has said there. You know, I think that the vast majority of employers are very happy to have a discussion on flexibility with it, you know, and, you know, I think that they have no choice. I think an employer has to be flexible because that's the demand that's there. And like that, if you want to have more women in your senior management team, you will, well, and men, to be fair, at this stage, everybody needs flexibility, but in particular, often the barrier, I think, is the fact that, can I take on this extra responsibility when I'm in the caring role or when I have a family? And what effect does that have if I take a time out in terms of my career progression? And I mean, while we have that conversation, I just think that, to me, if employers want to retain staff, which and retain skill sets, they have to be flexible. They have to meet the demands of the workforce. And as Helen said, I am very, very aware that there's a lot of organisations in Ireland that have, you know, a male-only board or majority male board, and they are actively looking to have more representation on their board, but they're finding it difficult maybe to find somebody to fit the role. So I would say that we will see way more change there over the next few years. I think the change is coming. So I would say to women in GIS industry, keep an eye out for those, you know, if you want to be in a senior role, you know, definitely start to build your profile there, build your network, let people know. So professional visibility, I mentioned this to the panel earlier, but professional visibility is really key there. Just because you are in a role within an organization doesn't mean that everybody can see you, can hear you, and understands that you want to progress in a certain way. So don't be afraid to have, or there's never a bad time to have a conversation with your manager or with other people in the industry in your organization to say, you know, I would like to go for a promotion within this area, you know, whatever, whether it could be managerial or whether it's a technical role, and just, you know, voice your the fact that you want to move into a different role, or that you're open to looking at a different role, and what skill sets do you need, and start to build them. As Helen said, there is a lot of, you know, there is a lot, in a lot of cases, really, it is taking the bull by the horns yourself and being responsible for your own career path as well, you know, and just saying, okay, what do I need to do? Is there a program within the company that I can access, or is it something that I need to do outside myself? And just to go back on a point that Glen made earlier as well, is the fact that the portfolio. So in a similar way, a portfolio is really, really good thing to have. If you're say graduate and you're going for a new role, or if you're in an early career role, so you're in the first couple of years and you're not seeing, you know, you feel like there's some gaps in your CV, definitely start to work on sort of pet projects and show the fact that you've gone from a project from end to end and you can demonstrate skills, because all in an interview, that's what it's all about. How can I show the skills that I've developed? How can I show that I have an understanding of what you're looking for? So I think that goes without saying. Also, I think for women, I would say with flexibility, if a job advert doesn't mention flexibility, don't assume that there isn't flexibility. Just make sure you can always call, ask about it, or if you're in an interview, talk about it, ask about what their policy is. Is there other people within the team that have had flexible roles? Is there, you know, what's their procedure around that? So sometimes if it's not advertised, doesn't mean it's not there. Also, for anybody looking at a job role, I know Glen has mentioned this before, you know, just because you don't tick one box doesn't mean you don't go for it. Like every job profile that's advertised will have an element of yes, meeting certain criteria, but also the ability to build in and build on that and develop over time. So I would always say there's no harm in sending in your CV with, like, the example of the 1.5 years versus the 3 year. Just send it in. If you're shortlisted, you're shortlisted. If you're not, well, then they've probably got a lot of people within those roles. So yeah, look, it's the work-life balance is always key. Particularly for women, I think, is with families or in a caring role, or, you know, so yep, that's it.
Thanks,
for me.
Marion. And Glen, do you have anything to add to that from the conversations that you have with employers and in your role as a recruiter yourself?
Oh, it's so much points in my head there. I should have wrote them down. Touched on a lot there, but I think again it really boils down to communication at the start. So you know, find someone in the industry that has done well in their career, reach out to them and talk. You know, it might even be in your current role in that company. There's someone further up along the chain that you can talk to them, ask about their career progression and how they got there. Not every company has these clear steps that you can go up and progress. You know, some companies are small, it's a GIS technician role, and that's the way it's going to be for the next 10 years. Or, you know, there's different companies and different cultures and different progression throughout each company. You know, I see people that have GIS technician as their job title, but they're not a GIS technician. They're more like a GIS analyst or beyond, you know. And I always recommend just changing your own title on your CV. No one's ever going to ask anyway, because that's the job you're really doing. You're underselling yourself by keeping that GIS technician title there. But you've got to be honest. You've got to be honest with yourself where you are in your career and the skills that you have developed. Maybe you do sit at that GIS technician level, but don't undersell yourself. So many people I find undersell themselves when there's no need to. I think imposter syndrome seems to be rife throughout geospatial. We're always second guessing ourselves, or we're seeing on LinkedIn, this person's doing fantastic stuff. What am I doing with myself? You know, we've seen today that there's so many different avenues to take in GIS. You know, with surveying, GIS itself, other avenues, Earth observation, they're only a handful. You know, you're looking for your sort of niche. For me, it was automating in Esri technology, ArcPy and the ArcGIS API for Python. 10 years ago, that carved my career path. I know people that are solely FME and they're fantastic at it. Surveyors, you know, different technology and different paths. I always say kind of learn a little about a lot and then a lot about a little. So have a good overview of the industry, the technologies, being able to sit in a room and be able to talk about it. That's the little about a lot. The a lot about a little is your expertise. That's what's going to keep you employed and be able to switch roles constantly if needed. Or, you know, when it comes to pay rise time, proving your value because you have expertise in that smaller domain, that smaller niche in geospatial. You know, I should have wrote down my notes. Professional development. I've worked with some fantastic women throughout my GS career. I even poached two of them from one company to the next. You know, and I'd say again, reach out to these people. Like LinkedIn again is fantastic. You can see people's career. You can ask, why did they move role? Reach out to them or ask, how did they do it? You know, did they just go through a job board or how they moved on? You'll find what I really love about the geospatial industry is people are so approachable. Anyone that I've ever asked a question to or asked help for have come back fairly quick and given me a dig out. And this is even a testament on, say, technical boards like Stack Exchange or Esri communities. No, it's a fantastic community. So lean into that. Find someone that you can communicate, you maybe click with and can build a rapport with, and you can learn from their experiences. I've talked to loads in the last year. Every Friday I put an hour aside and I do 2 25-minute calls with people that just fill out a form on my website, and I talk through my experience, or if they want CV guidance or interview guidance or anything that they're looking for. So there's loads of options out there to figure out what's happening now and sort of what's ahead of you in this industry. As I only started out recruitment maybe a year and a bit ago. I've learned a lot in that year. When I have advertised roles, it's a smaller percentage, it seems, of women that have applied for them. And I have, you know, this is feedback I've given to clients looking for to these roles as well. I don't know why that is, but that's just something that I've noticed myself, and I kind of do make it to contact and screen for these roles, but I have to be very objective anyway. You know, it's skills that these companies are looking for to be filled. So again, I'd say look at the job spec that you want and start working towards that now. You know, I find people are waiting for a training course to come along. They're going to do a training course in 3 months' time. That's going to be 2 days, and then they're going to do the training course, and they're probably not going to touch anything that training course after that. You know, consistent learning is far better than those 2 days. Break it down. Break that two-day course down and make it up yourself, and start learning half an hour a day for a month and apply that daily. And you'll find that skills progression is far better than that 2-day course will ever do for you.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Glenn. So we're coming towards the end now, and I know some people have to leave by 2. So do any of you have any final words of advice or wisdom? Perhaps thinking particularly about changes that you see coming down the tracks over the next 5 to 10 years. And, you know, interestingly enough, I've had a couple of emails just in the last 2 days from prospective master's students asking about AI and the implications of AI on the industry and what's that going to do for us. So any final words from anyone?
Yeah, I
Helen.
think AI is certainly, you can't go to anything now, or there, I'm not here about AI, but, with our students here today, in the next few years, we've got to remember that AI will predict and mitigate for disasters before they even happen. Autonomous systems have been navigating our cities. We hear now about physical AI, which bridges the gap between the physical and digital world. This is the world they're moving into. And part of that is because of the huge data sets, our ability to collect above, below, and beyond, is incredible now. I think for those of us who have been around a long time, we remember when data was the new oil. Well, now we're swimming in sensors and planning in data. So you need AI. So this is part of that, strengthening, I guess, your information. You need to have a look out there and think about where those real world solutions will be solved with AI. Because at the moment we think of AI in a very small frame. But in our industry, AI, this is going to really change the way we deliver projects, the way we interact with data. So certainly it's an exciting time. We hear a lot of bad press around AI. For me, it's a very exciting time.
Thanks, Helen.
I think
Marion.
a lot of people are already working with AI and machine learning AI anyway, in terms of the way that the platforms that they're using and the routines that they use, etc., that they're kind of already even everybody it's touching everybody in some way or shape or form on a daily basis. It's just a case of how far it's going and how much of those skill sets will be fundamental, I think, in the industry. So I suppose that's it. So there will be an element of that, but without even the AI sort of side, just I would also say being aware, even for interviews and stuff, about security, cyber security, understanding where you fall into, an organization and how that's so important that you're aware of it and being able to answer maybe able to even bring it up in an interview. I think that's really important. So cybersecurity, what the individual, how they're responsible, what kind of information that you understand and what your role would be within that, just on as a member of the organization, and also data quality and stuff like that. That's very important as well. So just understanding some of those kind of areas as well when you come into an interview can kind of help differentiate you from other people, maybe. So, and obviously AI, we'll see if there's any questions on AI in the interview, but I don't think we have any yet, but well, any specifics. But yeah, look, I think that there's plenty to come in the future. I think, Glen, you probably have even more to add to that now than I have.
It's probably some of it's more opinion than fact. I don't think AI is going to replace us. What's going to happen is people in the geospatial industry are going to utilize AI to be beneficial to their workflows. So, AI can seem a bit scary, but at the end of the day, we'll be the users of it, not the creators, which is the main point. And it's very hyped up at the moment. People are talking about it, but I'm yet to see real concrete examples of it being used properly at the moment. I've asked on LinkedIn and no one came back to me. And that's the forefront of technology, and you have to realize it takes a long time for that to filter down and be used daily. When you think about it, ArcPro came out over a decade ago and there's still companies using ArcMap. It doesn't happen overnight. I panicked 10 years ago thinking I needed programming, and that still hasn't, that's only really started kicking in the last couple of years, where people want more and more automation. I saw it 10 years ago and I thought, I'm never getting a job if I don't have this. I could have had a fantastic career without ever learning Python programming. So, don't fear AI. It's something that's going to benefit us all, but it will stand out, as Marion said, if you can talk about it and you know how it can be utilized or what the future of it is going to look like, and sort of prepare yourself for it.
Okay, thanks. So we've got one question that's come into the chat so far, so we'll take that one first from Aisling Brady, who says the geospatial world is very diverse in terms of what we can work in. Could be infrastructure, energy, biodiversity, etc. I find it hard to choose a niche because I have interest in all. Any tips on that? Maybe Glen, you started out by introducing yourself and saying how many different industries you had worked in. So yeah, how did you choose between them?
You won't. I think it's just a natural progression. At the start of my career, it was just have a job. There wasn't many around in Ireland at the time, as there are today. So I can't imagine how difficult it is to try and decide what you want to go into. But the good thing is you're not pigeonholing yourself early on. I do talk to people and they have this very clear, narrow way they want to go, which can be great, but you're kind of really narrowing your early career there. Something you've done in a different industry can really be translatable into where you want to be later on. So no matter what industry you go into, you're going to learn some fantastic geospatial skills that transcend pretty much every industry that you go into, and then they'll have their own separate parts. I think it will happen naturally for you. You might even think a path that you want to go down, and all of a sudden you've gone down a different one and thinking that just fades away. Throughout my career, first of all, my motivation was just to have a job, and then I labored early on in my career. I didn't have a lot of skills progression. After 7 years, I realized I'm going to change this, and I restudied spatial databases and programming and geocomputation. And so it took me 7 years to kind of figure out a path I wanted to go down. In the end, I got a lot of people that are sort of in environmental or ecology and want to move into a more GIS specialist role. So you see, as the career progresses, your mindset will change, and you'll figure it out. And I've no doubt that you'll figure it out. And as I've always mentioned, you can always talk to other people and the avenues that they've gone down and the roles that they take. I've a network myself where I talk to someone who's an expert in Survey 123, an expert in FME, an expert in something else, and I rely on them when I'm thinking of upskilling in something else. Is it worth it for me to go and explore that? So you will find your niche. And I think that probably goes with sort of Earth observation as well. I'm not too clued in on the survey industry.
Okay, thanks, Glen. Marion or Helen, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
Well,
no, I just think smart cities covers a lot of that, whether it's infrastructure or, climate. The smart cities initiatives that are going on now are hugely interesting and cover a lot of the important topics that Aisling mentions.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I suppose it's great to be in a position where you find that there's so many different avenues that are interesting. And I think, as the main thing I would say is, if you're, want to move, pick something that, just make the move and see where see what experience you can gather, and if that doesn't suit, move again. I think that as Glen mentioned, you can imagine back in my day, Glen, you were going to work in your bare feet. That's how bad it was in terms of getting a job. But no, and yes, it was get a role first, establish yourself, see where you want to be, and then move on. I think that the jobs market is there, that people can move from role to role, and establish where they feel that they fit best. But at the end of the day, too, data is data. So even if whether it's environmental or whether it's engineering, it's just really just a different application, but the whole premise is much the same. So your skill set should be transferable in most industries. So.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It would be how you sell yourself.
Exactly,
a big, how you sell yourself on your CV and in your interview. When I get CVs and I'm recruiting for a GIS role and it reads, I'm a software engineer with 3 years experience. Now, I'm not looking for a software engineer, I'm looking for a GIS professional. So how you sell yourself is very important. You can just saying a geospatial professional covers it all, really, which I really recommend to call yourself on your summary, because then you haven't put yourself down as a narrow. So, and most people want a geospatial profession or a geospatial consultant or a GIS. If you want to narrow it down, or surveying specialist, pick your sort of broader term for describing yourself when you're looking for roles.
Okay, and we've got endorsement of what everyone's been saying today from Joanna, who just affirms that LinkedIn got her first job 2 months after she had finished her master's degree, but also the importance of actually in-person engagement through symposia, conferences, workshops, and so on. So thank you, Joanna. It's good to have the endorsement of what our speakers have been saying. A couple of other questions that have come in, which we could spend an awful long time talking about. So perhaps just one word from each of you in terms of challenges that are common in the field and how to deal with them. So where to start with challenges? Marion?
Oh gosh, I suppose the main challenge is, I think, possibly just getting some of your experience under your belt, I think, is a key thing. I think maybe the fact that so I would say there, really, if you are lacking in experience, do try and have some sort of personal project that you can put in your CV, or say something from your university project that you can put down, and really think about it before you come to an interview, and how you can hit all the markers for various technical challenges that they have outlined in the advertisement, and try and apply the experience you have, however limited it may be, to those key pieces. Also, I think just the fact that the pace of change is so fast at the moment, technologically and data, etc., that really it just means trying to keep up to date. Watch whether it's engaging with groups like ourselves, Fiona, or whether it is engaging with other industry groups. I would say that's very important, and looking at LinkedIn profiles and newsletters, and just to see what's happening in the industry, so that you can try stay a bit ahead of it, or upskill the best way you can as it move along. Yeah.
Helen, anything to add to that?
I think some of the challenges really are around just the lack of people. Our university pipeline has shrunk over the last couple of years. So in a lot of these companies, many companies have so much work, so many projects. It can often be difficult to find your voice, right? Especially when you're new, because they are very busy. So that's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. So as I mentioned, focused networking, even when you get that role, find those people that you can surround yourself with that know a little bit more, that can help you learn the best practices within that company, because that's really important when you're client facing or even in a team, and sharpen your skill set. And you should be able to overcome challenges, really. There'll always be challenges, but just think of them as an opportunity. And that goes back to your communication skills as well.
Very positive way of looking at it. So, Glen, do you have any other words on challenges or opportunities?
For the opportunities, I'll just go back to pick that sort of job spec that really appeals to you, and work towards it. I think that's a challenge for a lot of people that have just left university. University is going to give you a great foundation, but it's not going to make you an expert in anything. It'll give you a fantastic foundation to build upon and progress through your career. The challenges are what skills to focus on, and which will you should decide over the first sort of 2 years, where in your graduate program, or where you've started your early stage career. You're going to learn a lot in those 2 years. You might learn a lot in a year, and then not learn so much in the next year, but constantly focus on the bigger picture. That 5 years is really probably the big picture. Where do I want to be in 5 years? What skills do I want to have? The biggest challenge is juggling your work commitment and then working towards those skills. I found recruiting for clients that not a lot of people meet the full job spec. And that's where Marion was saying, apply anyway. Yes, absolutely apply. Most roles will have the essentials, and they're usually a small part. The rest are desirables. So yeah, you probably need to hit a really high percentage of those essentials, but when it comes to desirables, it's only a small amount. But you want to take as many as those as possible. So just the challenge I'd set you is to work towards a job spec you want, and continue learning.
Okay, great. Thanks, Glenn. And then just with a final question here, I mean, it kind of goes back to what all of you have been saying in terms of how you sell yourselves and how you actually promote your own knowledge and skills and align that with the job that you're applying for. Shubham, I think maybe you need to take advantage of some of these mentoring and networking opportunities that everybody here has been mentioning, and perhaps approach somebody as an individual and ask for advice. It might just be the way you're setting out your CV, and certainly from some of the students and CVs I've seen over the years, just a bit of tweaking and restructuring of a CV can make a huge difference, and particularly the cover letter, and thinking about things like your USP, your unique selling point. What is it about you that makes you the most desirable candidate for a particular job? So I'm not sure that we can answer your question directly here and now on this call, but I'm sure you'll find somebody who can give you some personal tailored advice over the coming days and weeks. And I suppose it just falls to me then to thank our three panelists from today. Ireland is a small country. We do all kind of get to know one another, and and just echoing some of the things that our panelists have been saying here, we often in the universities get sent job adverts before they ever get advertised. And I think Glenn started out by saying, how do you actually find where people are getting these jobs from? Well, some of it is through university networks, but I know there's also a lot of other both formal and informal networks that get established. So try and get yourselves into some of those networks, and who knows what doors they will open for you. So thank you very much. I hope everybody feels they've got something out of it today, and hopefully several people are able to get themselves into the job market or progress within the job market as a result of some of the very practical hands-on advice that our panelists have been telling us about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.